I had twins. Looking forward to your $10,000 gift for the baby shower. My sister, Sarah said with a triumphant voice. So, I responded loudly to her like this. Okay. I'll go with my husband, the real estate king worth $500 billion. What did you say? I could hear her surprised voice over the phone. She must have heard from our parents that my spouse was some shabby, ordinary man. $500 billion? What do you mean? Just what I said. She seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but laugh. Then Sarah, catching on, retorted. That can't be. Because. Let's talk about it when we meet in person. Including that thing you did back then. Wait a minute. Anne. I'll be there tomorrow then. I said so and hung up the phone unilaterally. She tried to call me back many times, but I ignored all her calls. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Imagining her regretful face, I laughed out loud. My name is Anne. I'm a 38-year-old housewife. Living with my husband, Joe, it's just the two of us. A housekeeper does all our housework, so I live a leisurely life every day. But actually, Joe is my second husband. I divorced my first husband 6 years ago. I met him later when I was working in a restaurant and remarried. I married my first husband, Kevin, because my parents recommended it. My dad liked Kevin, who was the president of a company that did business with my parents' company, and that's how it started. I had no say in the matter, and the marriage was decided the day after I met him. As the eldest daughter, I was always told to take over the family business, so it didn't strike me as odd. Therefore, our marriage was far from sweet. Kevin, a CEO with an annual revenue of $5 billion, hardly came home and was always out having fun. Even on the rare occasions he did come home, he would just make a disgusted face at me and go to his bedroom. When I started to hate this life, I was suddenly called back to my parents' house. And get a divorce. What? Why all of a sudden? I was confused by my mother's sudden words. Kevin's company was thriving. There was no benefit to divorcing now. Hoping that my situation had moved them, I was next confronted with a shocking scene. Why are Kevin and Sarah? Sarah is my sister. My parents adored Sarah, who was 10 years younger than me, as if they barely saw me. And there she was, walking into the room arm in arm with Kevin. Anne. I've taken a liking to Kevin. So give him to me. Give him to you? Kevin is not a toy. But Kevin likes me better. Right? Sarah said, leaning into Kevin. Then Kevin looked at me with a sleazy smile. The moment I saw those eyes, I had a bad feeling. Younger women are better than middle-aged ones, and Sarah is prettier. I think she's better suited to be a CEO's wife. How could you? Mom. Being discarded for being older and not as pretty as Sarah, I sought help from my mother. I was raised strictly as the eldest daughter, but I believed my mother loved me. That's what I thought. That's why I told you to get a divorce. If Sarah wants him, you must give him to her. You're the older sister, aren't you? How could? I was speechless. I knew my mother had a soft spot for Sarah, but I thought she would be on my side at a time like this. Then my father spoke quietly. Just get the divorce already. Starting today, Sarah will be the successor of this house. Having a divorce in your history is shameful. Once divorced, get out of here immediately. Dad! With tears in my eyes, I wrote the divorce papers. Then, as my parents told me, I packed up my belongings and was quickly kicked out of the house. And you'll be in trouble now, won't you? Here's something in place of compensation. Sarah is so kind. Be thankful to her. They mockingly threw a bundle of money at me. Holding that bundle of cash, I was at a loss for what to do next. What should I do now? Being a full-time housewife, I had no means to earn a living. After all, I had been trained for marriage, never even had a part-time job. For now, I decided to go to a hotel and think about what to do next. I moved to the neighboring town and went to a real estate agent. Because I had some savings originally, I could easily rent a place for one person, so I absolutely didn't want to use the compensation money thrown at me. With the thought of someday getting my revenge, I started taking action. After renting a one-bedroom apartment and catching my breath, the next step was to find a job. However, finding a job proved difficult. Then, a call from Sarah came through on my smartphone. Anne? Didn't you know this whole area is Kevin's territory? You won't get hired anywhere you apply. How could this be? I was at a loss. Ultimately, just as Sarah said, I couldn't find a job. Without the ability to work, my savings would eventually run out. I decided to live in a town far away. The place I moved to was a peaceful town with the scent of the sea breeze. It was a nice place. I got a job at a local restaurant and started working there, including lodging.
Hey, give me some liquor.
Right away.
I want some chicken over here.
Understood. While I was new to serving food, the customers were all kind to me.
Anne's smile makes me feel like I can keep going tomorrow.
Aren't you going to marry again, Anne? Marriage again.
What a waste.
Being still young, many suggested I remarry, and each time I would avoid the topic. I didn't want to end up with someone like Kevin if I remarried.
And could I get a beer?
Hi Joe, you've worked hard today. Sure. While everyone suggested I remarry, regular customer Joe never did. I found our conversations very comfortable, and eventually, I looked forward to his visits. It was after 3 years in this town that Joe asked me out on a date.
How about going to see the sea? Eh?
Since it's right in front of us. Seeing Joe, usually so calm, fumbling for words made me laugh. I didn't dislike the idea. I accepted his invitation. Our first date was just a walk on the beach in front of the restaurant, which was quite uneventful, but we talked about various things. Joe told me about losing his parents early and living alone in this town he loved. I shared about my family and Kevin. Then, Joe cried on my behalf. Maybe I should have cried like this. Watching tears flow from his eyes, I thought so. After that, we went out many times together and eventually started dating. Honestly, I can't remember who said I love you first. But our relationship began very naturally. And about a year later, Joe proposed. I can't imagine a life without you, Anne.
Is that a proposal?
That's the idea. I laughed at Joe's lack of confidence and accepted his proposal. Then we got married. I had no intention of informing my parents or Sarah, but Joe suggested we at least let my parents know, so I contacted them for the first time in 4 years and decided to return to my childhood home. Oh, you're still alive. Remarriage? Go ahead, but we won't provide any support. If you're going to remarry such a poor-looking man, don't ever come back to this house again. My face turned red with anger as they said this in front of Joe. Indeed, Joe isn't into luxury. Even so, he was wearing a high-brand suit today. Despite that, I no longer wanted any relationship with such parents. I was about to speak out in anger when. Then, I will marry Anne. We won't contact you in the future, nor will we ask for any support. Joe. My parents were surprised by Joe's straightforward attitude, but soon started to express their indignation. Joe, with a smile, brushed off my parents and took my hand, leading me out of the house. I didn't expect them to be that harsh. I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable.
It's okay, don't worry about it. I feel a bit relieved now,
I said, smiling at him. Joe relaxed, seeing my expression. And then, we returned to our new home. After a while, the number of calls from unknown numbers increased. I ignored all these calls and consulted with Joe.
Let's ignore it. But it's creepy, so let's change it tomorrow. Thank you, that sounds good.
I was very grateful to Joe for his prompt response. The next morning, Joe quickly made time for us to go change our phone number. Then, the calls from unknown numbers stopped. I felt relieved. However, after a while, calls from unknown numbers started coming in again. Hello. Even when I answered, the caller would hang up without saying anything. It made me feel very uncomfortable, so I consulted with Joe again. Then Joe said,
Just ignore all calls from unknown numbers.
And I followed his advice, ignoring all the calls. Eventually, the calls stopped, and I soon forgot about them. Then one day, I received a call from my childhood home. I had forgotten to delete it from my phone book after cutting ties, so I answered the call. But it wasn't my mother on the other end, it was Sarah.
Hello? Anne? Are you doing well?
Sarah.
Don't sound so scared.
It's not unreasonable for my voice to betray my feelings, considering she's the last person I want to talk to. For the time being, I decided to confirm the first question that came to mind. How do you know my number?
I found out easily. You know, I have money.
Her way of speaking confirmed to me that she hadn't changed at all. I thought about hanging up quickly. But before I could, Sarah started talking cheerfully. I had twins. I'm looking forward to your $10,000 gift for the baby shower, she said with a triumphant voice. I answered her loudly.
Okay. I'll go with my husband, the real estate king worth $500 billion. What?
I could hear her surprised voice over the phone. She must have heard from our parents that my partner was some shabby, ordinary man.
$500 billion? What do you mean? Just what I said.
Sarah seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but laugh. Then she retorted.
That can't be. Because. Let's talk about it when we meet in person. Including that thing you did back then. Wait a minute. Anne. I'll be there tomorrow then.
I said so and hung up the phone unilaterally. She tried to call back many times, but I ignored all her calls.
I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
I waited for Joe to come home and explained the situation to him. Then he suggested with a laugh.
I'll go in my usual outfit.
I nodded in agreement. And I decided to wear my usual clothes and return to my childhood home as well.
I'm home. You're back. And did you bring your husband? Eh?
Sarah rushed out to greet us with a smile but was surprised by our attire. That's not surprising since the clothes we wore were bought from a no-brand, common store. Both the t-shirts and pants were around $20 each. What's with those shabby clothes?
Aren't you a real estate king?
I responded with a smile to Sarah's words. Then Sarah made her own interpretations and looked at me with a mocking expression. So, it was a lie after all. You can't hide it with pretense.
It's not a lie,
I said, pointing to the screen of my smartphone. There, Joe's name and photo were displayed. After looking at it closely, Sarah exclaimed,
Wait, that major real estate group? The president of that? No way! It's not a lie.
Sarah glared at me with frustration. Then she pointed at our clothes and started to insult us.
Then why are you wearing such shabby clothes?
I gave Sarah a patronizing look in response.
We have to match the economic situation of the family home, don't we? Are you saying our house has fallen? No, I judged that this level of attire was appropriate.
Joe and I usually dress formally when we go to someone's home. We have never been disrespectful enough to wear t-shirts and jeans. That's why we deliberately chose this attire this time. There are 2 reasons for this. First, as earlier, to make Sarah misunderstand and ruin her plan. Seeing her frustrated expression means this was a success. And second, I started walking towards the living room. Joe followed behind me, and Sarah chased after us. Surely, there's no one as reassuring to have by my side as Joe. I forcefully opened the living room door. Be quiet. Open it more quietly, like Sarah.
What's with that cheap look? I'm really disappointed in you.
As soon as the door opened and my parents said that, I couldn't help but laugh. They looked at me, still laughing, as if I were something suspicious.
Sarah mentioned that and supposedly married a rich man, but it seems it was just in showing off.
Right. With such an outfit, it's clear.
We don't want you wearing such cheap clothes in our house,
I retorted while still laughing at my parents' arbitrary remarks.
Maybe the business is failing because you judge people by their clothes? What did you say?
My parents were shocked by my comment. But Sarah was just standing there, dumbfounded. I decided to enlighten her gently. I heard it was a deficit last year.
How is it going this term? Still uncertain. It's none of your business. Actually, I'd like to say it's none of my business, but unfortunately, our family ties haven't been legally severed.
My father glared at me with a look of frustration. That expression reminded me, Sarah takes after our father, and I realized I take after our mother. In fact, since Kevin married Sarah, my father's company has been on a downward spiral. After receiving Sarah's call, I had Joe confirm it, and far from recovering, their performance has been worsening. The second reason we wore low-priced clothes was this. We wanted to let our nearly bankrupt parents underestimate us first, so when they were told about the bankruptcy, the impact would be greater. I continued talking while sighing at my glaring parents.
I intend to renounce any inheritance when the time comes. You were planning on inheriting the estate? All of Mom and Dad's money is mine.
Sarah, who had been silent until now, cut in. It seems she didn't understand what I was saying. I could explain it nicely, but honestly, it's tiresome. However, without explaining, the conversation wouldn't move forward. Just when I thought that, Joe succinctly explained in my place.
Your parents' company is about to go bankrupt. Eh?
Sarah looked at our parents with a shocked face. And they awkwardly turned away. Then, unbelievably, Sarah wrapped her arms around Joe. Then, Joe, could you cover for them? In return, you can do whatever you like with me. Just kidding. Despite Sarah's light-hearted words, a tension filled the air between me and Joe. Joe sighed deeply, forcefully removed Sarah's arms, and spoke up.
Can you not do that? It's disgusting.
Disgusting?
Me?
Yes, you're disgusting. Joe emphasized, as if to make sure his point got across. Shocked by the blunt rejection, Sarah stepped back and glared at me, teary-eyed.
How dare you say something so rude? I'm prettier than that plane and over there.
That's impossible. She is slimmer, her skin is clearer, and not just her features, but her heart is much purer. He said, listing my good qualities one after another. Being good at cooking, intellectual, considerate, and more honest than anyone else. Hearing this, it's as if he's describing a perfect being, which is somewhat embarrassing. I tugged lightly on Joe's sleeve twice to stop him. Then Joe turned to me and smiled. This modesty is also a charm that your sister lacks.
What are you talking about?
Sarah retorted angrily. Since the last time I saw her, her body had significantly enlarged. She must have gained at least 44 pounds. Her face, once praised for its beauty, was now covered in acne and blemishes, far from pretty. Presumably, pampered by our parents and affected by age, her metabolism slowed down, leading to weight gain. Typical her, I sighed internally. Yet, our parents defended her.
Sarah just gained a little weight after giving birth. She'll return to her former self soon.
No, this is clearly due to an unhealthy lifestyle.
Stay out of it!
My mother, face red with anger, yelled at me. The mother I couldn't oppose while living at home now didn't scare me at all after 6 years. To such a mother, I revealed another truth.
By the way, there's a chance that the sons Sarah gave birth to aren't Kevin's, right? What? Is that true, Sarah?
As I spoke, Kevin's voice came from behind. Turning around, I saw Kevin holding 2 babies.
Long time no see, Kevin. What does this mean?
He approached me aggressively. Joe stepped in front of me and began to explain on my behalf.
I heard about Kevin from Anne. We had someone look into it before coming here. I didn't expect to find evidence in just half a day, though.
Joe said, pulling out his smartphone. It showed a photo of a man and a woman holding hands, entering a hotel. Upon seeing it, Kevin exclaimed,
Sarah! You're still in touch with him?
Then, without being asked, Kevin began to spill details.
Right after we got married, Sarah cheated on me with that man in the photo. She said it was just once, so I forgave her.
Kevin said, glaring at her. Then Sarah glared back at him and retorted,
You forgave me, but you, becoming a subsidiary of our family company, are too arrogant, Kevin. It was all Sarah's insistence.
Sarah and Kevin were uglily blaming each other, their argument escalating. It seems Kevin's company became a subsidiary of Sarah's father's company soon after their marriage, leading to a rapid decline in its performance.
I wish I hadn't divorced Anne. Kevin, what are you saying? There's no way you'd prefer Anne over me.
Sarah screamed hysterically, to which Kevin raised his voice as well. I guess so.
And didn't cheat on me, and I was free to do as I pleased. If there were kids with Anne, she would take care of them, so I wouldn't have to.
Kevin realized something mid-sentence, his expression changing. I had a bad feeling about it.
That's it. And let's remarry. It must have been our destiny.
Kevin, lost in his delusions, kneeled before me. I recoiled from the sheer creepiness. Joe stepped between me and Kevin.
And is my wife. There's no chance she'll remarry you. Who are you? Get out of the way!
Kevin shouted at Joe with irritation. From behind Joe, I made my stance clear to Kevin.
I could never remarry you. I wouldn't want your children. Oh, you couldn't have them anyway. But still, no. What do you mean I couldn't have them?
Kevin looked dumbfounded. As did our parents and Sarah. I decided to explain to them.
When I was still married to Kevin, we went to a gynecologist. Remember? I had tests done. Right, you dragged me to the gynecologist once. But it was your fault, wasn't it?
Kevin kept insisting his health was fine, clearly wanting to believe I was the problem. I confronted Kevin with the truth after 6 years.
The one who can't have children is you, Kevin. Lies, lies. Then whose are these kids? Unfortunately, they're not yours.
Kevin slumped upon hearing this. The housekeeper hurried to take the babies from Kevin's hands, with a stunned Sarah in the background.
So, Sarah, it seems they aren't Kevin's children. Sarah, why didn't you tell me about such a defect? If you had told me properly by now.
Sarah started to shift the blame masterfully. I listened dispassionately until she ran out of steam. Then laughed and said, "Isn't it your own fault?"
What did you say? Then give me Joe.
He already said no. Then give me money. Families should help each other out. You say that. Her words irritated me. There was never any familial support for me. In times of hardship, instead of solidarity, I was met with cold indifference. Unfortunately, I'm not part of your family.
I am, right? Anne, don't be so grumpy.
Sarah's words were irritating, but taking them seriously was pointless. I took a deep breath. Before I could retort, my mother spoke up. "And I'm sorry for everything. But we're really struggling. If you really have money, could you help us?" That's right. As Sarah said, families help each other. Can't you forgive what happened before? What on earth are these people saying? Their words left me utterly baffled. There was no point in hoping for their remorse. I discarded the slight affection I had left for this family and looked at them coldly. Noticing my gaze, they momentarily trembled but soon plastered on insincere smiles. "We apologize for everything." Yes, yes. We've said this much, so you should compromise a bit. Their unrepentant attitude made me sigh. Then, with a smile just around my lips, I asked my mother,
Why do I have to do so much for a half-sister and biological parents who bullied me?
"A half-sister? What are you talking about?" "Sarah is my child." Even with such a clueless response from my father, it seemed my mother understood what that implied. Her face turned pale. "What are you talking about, Anne?" "It's fine if you want to play dumb. I once saw Mom cheating. In fact, when I was still living at home, I caught my mother bringing a man into the house. It happened shortly after we got married. Kevin and I were away on business, and Sarah was on a trip with her friends. It was just my mother and me at home. When I returned from an errand my mother had asked me to run, I found unfamiliar men's shoes. At first, I thought we had a visitor and went to the living room, but no one was there. Curious, I then heard voices from the bedroom. I wanted to block my ears. But the next words I heard shocked me. "My husband doesn't know that Sarah is your child."
Sarah isn't our dad's child.
I covered my mouth with both hands to prevent myself from screaming out loud. I wanted to hear more, but sensing they were about to leave the bedroom, I hurried out to kill time and returned home when I thought the coast was clear. Curious about that incident, I investigated right after marrying Joe. The man turned out to be Mike, a longtime friend of my father. And the affair was still ongoing.
So, because you've been cheating on the family with him, you threw me out when Sarah wanted Kevin. What do you mean?
My mother, turning pale, shook her head in denial. Seeing her reaction, even my father seemed to grasp the meaning, his face reddening with anger towards my mother. I decided to give my father the name of my mother's affair partner.
Mom's affair partner is Mike. Mike? You mean she had an affair with him? Yes, even now.
My words left my father dumbstruck. Mike was considered a close family friend, so the betrayal must have hit him hard. Despite the situation, I felt no sympathy for my father.
What? I'm not Dad's child.
Sarah stood there, dumbfounded, with no one to retort. Are we done here?
I've already decided to renounce any inheritance, so do as you please from now on. But in return, I won't help you. Please leave me out of any future matters.
My voice shook a bit towards the end, but I managed to say everything I wanted. All right, let's go. I signaled Joe with my eyes, feeling refreshed. Just before leaving the room, I turned back and pulled an envelope from my bag. Oh, right. This is the compensation money you threw at me. I haven't used it, so it's still the full amount. Consider this a return for your baby shower gift. It's a bit more than you asked for, I said, placing the envelope in front of Sarah. Sarah, shocked, didn't move. We left the four of them behind and exited my childhood home. Afterwards, my parents didn't divorce, but their relationship turned cold. My mother's actions were severely restricted, and her affair with Mike was forcibly ended. My father stepped down from his position as president, tried living on his pension but failed due to his long-standing spending habits, and eventually had to sell the house. Passing by my old home recently, I saw it had been demolished, which somehow made me feel a bit relieved. Apparently, they now live in a rental apartment, struggling to keep up with the rent with both parents having to work. My mother, having never worked before, hasn't managed to keep a job and moves from one to another. My sister and her husband divorced. Naturally, Sarah took custody of the child. Sarah, having never worked and now with 2 children, struggled to live and ended up pushing herself onto her affair partner. But he was already married, and she's now in a difficult situation. While I could sympathize with them being half-related, remembering all they did makes me think it's their own fault. After his divorce, Kevin attempted to revive his company alone but was already tarnished by a bad reputation, leading to an exodus of business partners. Moreover, leaving the umbrella organization caused his stocks to crash, and it seems his business couldn't sustain itself. Eventually, his company went bankrupt. Also, amidst having no money, he got scammed in a marriage fraud on a dating app, losing the compensation money Sarah had paid him, and ended up broke. Furthermore, he's taken out loans from dubious sources and is now working hard in construction to repay his debts every day. He even called Joe asking for money but was firmly rejected since they're strangers to each other. He was demanding a divorce from me until the end, so there's no room for sympathy. As for me, I'm actually expecting our first child. Joe was overjoyed upon hearing the news and has already started designing a home prioritizing our child. He's even prematurely selecting babysitters, which makes me laugh at his excitement. It's going to be a boy. Neither Joe nor I have relatives anymore. But the people in our town are very kind, already offering various kinds of help.
Being born to a town full of such supportive people, this child is truly fortunate.
Joe and I talk about this every night. How are you feeling, Anne?
I feel quite well today.
That's great. I hope a healthy baby is born. Thank you. Everyone greets me like this when I go for a walk, which makes me very happy. And I'm truly glad to have moved to this town. And I couldn't decide between blue and green for the blanket, so I ended up buying both.
It's still too early for that.
While I scold Joe for buying something nearly every day, I'm knitting socks for the baby. I plan to finish them a week before the due date.
Ah, it kicked. Really? Daddy's here.
Joe reacts to my words, putting his ear to my stomach and talking to it. Just at that moment, the baby kicked again. He responded. Seems he likes me. Daddy loves you too.
Joe, really?
While I'm slightly exasperated, I find such moments endearing. Immersed in this happiness, I start knitting the socks again.
Agriculture, huh? Sounds poor. Just completely mismatched with our family.
My future mother-in-law said to me during a family meeting. I was well aware that my fiancé was the heir to a prestigious company. And I thought I understood what it meant to become his wife, how challenging it could be. But the words of my future mother-in-law were more cutting than I expected. She looked down upon my grandparents, who raised me, as mere country farmers. The arrogant future mother-in-law always stayed true to herself. This did not change even during the family meeting we had with my grandpa. However,
Emily, haven't you realized?
The shocking past revealed by my future father-in-law. Hearing this, the pride of my future mother-in-law was shattered. My life has been a whirlwind in the first half. Now as an adult, I sometimes feel that way. My name is Serena, I'm 27. As a child, after losing my parents one after the other, my grandparents raised me. My dad passed away from illness in my first year, and my mom suddenly disappeared in a car accident when I was in 4th grade. I somewhat understood my dad's death because others told me, but I fully comprehended my mom's. Perhaps due to the difference in my age, I had somehow moved on from my dad's death. But accepting my mom's took much longer. Supported by my grandparents, I believe I've overcome the sadness of being without my parents as I grew up. And they gave me unlimited love. To ensure I didn't struggle, they put me through college, always prioritizing me. I'm currently working as a professional in a company. In this industry-leading and long-established company, there are various people. But I never imagined I'd meet the president's son. Let alone date him.
Serena, would you date me?
Tyler was one of the employees seconded from a subsidiary to the head office. Only a few people in the company knew Tyler was the president's son. I didn't know until Tyler and I started dating and he confided in me.
Dad said to work at the head office, but I wanted to see every part of the company for the future.
Really?
I believe in the necessity of starting from the bottom, even if it's not quite apprenticeship.
Tyler and I participated in various projects together. He always worked more earnestly than anyone, taking on even the smallest tasks. When needed, he could lead and inspire the team. So kind, yet strong and dependable.
Marry me.
On our 2nd anniversary. At the aquarium, our first date spot, Tyler knelt down and proposed to me. It was a classic proposal.
I'd be honored.
With happiness and a bit of shyness, I accepted his proposal. When I told my grandparents, they cried with joy.
Serena is getting a family again.
It's like gaining another grandchild. My grandparents were looking forward to meeting Tyler. Having the family grow seemed like their greatest joy. I lost my parents, but my grandparents had lost their child. Our home lost its liveliness, and all of us tried unconsciously not to be weighed down by sorrow. For our family, my marriage was a very bright topic. I planned to bring Tyler home to meet my grandparents soon, but first, we had a family meeting with Tyler's family. Tyler's parents' home is, in essence, the president's house. That alone made me nervous. Moreover, the house we visited was magnificent from the entrance, and the interior was spacious and beautiful.
Nice to meet you. I'm Serena. Oh, so you're the one. Serena, is it?
Emily, my future mother-in-law, was cold from the beginning. Or rather, she had no intention of welcoming me in the first place. Emily is the president's wife. Going back in time, she was also a president's daughter. As Tyler told me, our company was originally founded by Emily's ancestors, and her grandfather and father had been presidents in succession. Tyler's dad, Kent, the current president, took over the company.
I'll do my best too. But in our house, Mom's dominance always prevails. Dad and I are overshadowed at home.
Tyler had hinted at Emily's nature beforehand, but the real thing was more impactful. Emily eloquently spoke about her family history. How she was raised in a distinguished family, maintaining her dignity. And how much effort she put into Tyler's education as a mother.
Tyler attended the same elite school as me and our entire family. Yes. Not just yes, Serena. Do you understand what that means?
Hey, Emily.
Kent, be quiet.
Shrugging off Kent's attempt to calm her, Emily glared at me.
Do you understand the value of the school that Tyler and I attended, Serena? The kind of privileged people who should attend there? What do you think? Mom!
Tyler also stood up, leaning towards Emily. But Emily, unfazed, turned her criticism towards Tyler.
Tyler, you had such a wonderful environment and connections. How could you choose someone like her as a marriage partner? Hey, that's rude to Serena.
Rude?
Tyler, I'm disappointed. After everything we've given you. Enough about the house, the family, please. Yes, it's supposed to be a happy occasion. You all be quiet.
What was supposed to be a meeting for the upcoming marriage turned into a family argument. I couldn't intervene, and in the end, Kent somehow managed to calm Emily down. On our way out, Kent desperately apologized to me. It's okay. I'm sorry for troubling you today.
No, it's not your fault. It's our fault.
The disappointment I felt seemed less than the shock Tyler and Kent experienced. Kent approved of the marriage, but Emily only reluctantly accepted it, not welcoming me. Whenever I joined family meals as a fiancé, Emily would sigh and express her discontent. Once, she asked about my family. I told her the truth, not hiding anything. How I lost my parents early and was raised by my grandparents. How we overcame sadness together, the three of us, supporting each other. How my grandparents worked hard in agriculture so I wouldn't have to struggle.
I am nothing but grateful to my grandparents. I believe my parents are watching over us, but the love I received from my grandparents who were actually there for me, I still remember it strongly.
I conveyed my feelings. The rest was up to how Emily felt about it. I hoped she would understand, even a little, but I was naive.
Agriculture, huh? Sounds poor. Just completely mismatched with our family. Mom, how could you say such a thing? That's right. Emily, how far will you go in belittling people? Belittle? I'm just telling the truth.
Emily and Kent argued as they used to. Kent apologized to me while scolding Emily. But that wouldn't make Emily back down. The meal ended in a heavy atmosphere. Serena. If you're fed up, you can leave me. Marrying me means dealing with Emily. I can't cut ties with her because of the company. Think about it, while you still can. Hearing Emily mock my grandparents and seeing Tyler with such a tired, dark expression left me at a loss for words. But I managed to respond.
It's okay. I feel sorry for Grandpa and Grandma, but I'm fine with this.
Really? Tyler and I continued to encourage each other as we moved towards our marriage. I knew we had to meet with Grandpa and Grandma soon, but I wasn't looking forward to it. What should I do? As I thought about this on my way home, my face must have shown my distress. What's wrong? Why such a gloomy face? Did something happen with Tyler? Grandma saw right through me, and I had no choice but to open up about everything. I told them about Emily's personality and what she said about me and my grandparents, leaving them in silence. Well, I suppose we should meet them once. Let's have a dinner soon. Grandpa finally spoke up. He instructed me to arrange the time. But he insisted on a high-end restaurant. I was puzzled, but Grandpa just laughed.
Don't worry, I'll pay for the meal.
That's all Grandpa said in the end. On the day of the dinner, Grandpa arrived alone. Grandma, shocked by Emily's behavior, refused to meet her. Grandpa and I waited for Tyler and his parents, but Tyler messaged that he and Kent would be late. That meant Grandpa and I would have to deal with Emily first. Just the thought gave me a headache. As I held my head, Emily arrived, greeted us curtly, and sat down. She looked at me and Grandpa with a very displeased expression.
You didn't have to match our family with a high-end restaurant. A lower-class place would have sufficed. No. It would be rude to meet for the first time in such a place. Oh, I made you worry. But I wonder how long you can keep this up. It's harsh to expect such standards from country farmers. Well, we prioritize living a healthy and honest life over money.
Grandpa faced Emily calmly and firmly, without changing his attitude or behavior. Emily seemed displeased and spat out sarcastic comments and irritation towards Grandpa.
Sorry for keeping you waiting.
Tyler finally showed up. Kent followed him. Kent started to say something but stopped when he locked eyes with Grandpa.
Hey, you two. Why apologize to these people? If we make them wait, that's how it should be treated. Hey, Emily.
Kent's lips trembled, and his face turned pale with cold sweat.
What now? Another opinion from you? No. Emily, don't you realize? Eh?
As Tyler and I watched in surprise, Kent deeply bowed to Grandpa.
Chairman, I deeply apologize for my wife's numerous rudeness. Please forgive us. No need, Chairman is a title from the past. President, today's not about that. What? What is it? Quiet. It's not what. This man was once the chairman of a corporation that saved our company from a crisis. Huh? What? I didn't know that. Emily has always been a haughty lady.
Kent remembered calling Grandpa chairman, but Grandpa had once managed several companies. By the time I was a child, he had become a farmer, and according to Grandma, he had wanted to retire early from being a businessman. I had no idea how significant a businessman Grandpa had been. But according to Kent, Grandpa was a wealthy and well-known chairman of a famous company. Back then, the company I work for was on the brink of bankruptcy under Emily's father's presidency. With no hope for a loan from the bank, the company was saved by Grandpa's company, where he was the chairman and also a business partner. Emily turned pale and stiffened at Kent's words.
Let's have a pleasant dinner today, as a start to our future relationship.
With Grandpa's smile and words, the tense dinner began. We ate cheerfully, without showing any irritation. Tyler and Kent seemed a bit dazed, but occasionally smiled and chatted with Grandpa. Emily, however, kept her head down and barely moved her hands. The wedding preparations accelerated after the dinner. We set the wedding date and planned the ceremony and reception. Marrying a company heir was more challenging than I thought. Emily was completely left out of the loop. After making a big mistake at the dinner, she seemed to have lost all her usual boldness. She was restless and awkward around me. When asked for her opinion in wedding discussions, she just shook her head. It was unimaginable she would ever be as aggressive as before. Emily. I have something to discuss. As I spoke, Emily tried to leave.
Wait, please. I'd like your advice on the dress design, color, and venue decoration.
It would be wrong for me to give my opinion. Emily looked down, feeling worthless.
That's not true. You're familiar with dresses and know about glamorous things.
That's no longer useful.
No, it's important to me. I want to talk about such things with you, Emily. I can't with my mom anymore.
I had given up on doing things with Mom a long time ago. It was the path I had to live, and there was nothing I could do about it, even if I hated it. But deep down, I had always hoped for it. A wish I never shared with Grandpa and Grandma. I knew it would only trouble them. But I could confide in Emily. Even with everything that had happened, she would become Mom when I married Tyler. I needed to face her properly first. I'm sorry. I never tried to understand your situation, Serena. Emily apologized with tears in her eyes. I silently nodded, taking her hand. Emily chose a beautiful red dress for me.
Serena, a softer shade suits you better than a dark red.
Emily, who knew about flowers, helped with the reception venue decoration. Tyler and Kent looked on happily as I, the planner, and Emily gathered together to discuss. I'm ready to live with my new family. Including my own life, I want to build happiness.
The numbers don't add up. You've been cheating.
Ben's angry voice echoes in my ears. Despite having just sipped a cafe latte, I feel terribly ill. I'm 10 months pregnant, and instead of showing remorse for making me drink milk, an allergen for me, Ben accuses me of infidelity.
No, help me.
I lack the energy to deny his suspicion clearly. My hoarse whisper bursts in front of him and fades away swiftly.
Acting won't help you. I won't be fooled. It's not like your allergy is a big deal.
Convinced that I'm cheating, he, seeing me in agony, doesn't help but leaves the house, still doubting me. What should I do? It's all over. With the last of my strength, I try to call someone on my mobile phone. But my weak hands let the phone slip away. Please. Someone help me. My name is Emma. I'm a 33-year-old housewife, living with my husband Ben, a classmate. We met through a mutual friend 2 years ago. Both past 30, we were already considering marriage, so when we met through our friend, we were acutely aware of each other as potential life partners. Ben works for a trading company, with a satisfying salary and handsome looks. Excuse me for asking, but why haven't you married until now? I knew it was blunt, but out of genuine curiosity, I asked him right there. Actually, I had a fiancé until 6 months ago, but it was called off. I was looking for a new partner since then. He answered cheerfully. I nodded in understanding. Being jilted must have been hard. I hadn't experienced it, but I could understand the pain in his heart. After that, we had a lively conversation about trivial things, like our hobbies and how we spend our days off. We shared interests in visiting art galleries and watching movies, making me feel that if we dated and married, we'd spend enjoyable days together. We hit it off and parted ways, agreeing to contact each other in a week. I was amazed at how quickly things progressed, but dating him felt comfortable, allowing me to be myself without undue stress. Being with him, I knew I could be myself. Instinctively feeling this, I started making moves on him. It seemed like he reciprocated my feelings, and just a month after meeting, we started dating. It was a whirlwind romance, totally different from any relationship I'd had before. But I already knew he was a good man, handsome and with a great income, so honestly, I wanted to secure him as my future partner. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and a year after we started dating, we got married. He proposed during a dinner on a cruise ship on my birthday. I have a milk allergy, so he made sure that my courses were prepared with soy milk instead. I really appreciated these thoughtful gestures from him. He was my pride and joy. Naturally, I accepted the engagement ring and carefully placed it on my left ring finger. I had dreamt of this moment, but having it become reality made me wonder if it was all a dream. That's how happy I was. I'll cherish you for life, Emma. He said, his cheeks slightly flushed from the wine, and kissed my cheek. That night was the epitome of happiness, savoring the joy of marrying him. Soon after, we registered our marriage and moved into our own place. How about near your parents' place, Emma? It's close to my work too, and it'll be reassuring, right? Really? That's great, thank you. Knowing I was an only child, he suggested living near my parents, thinking they'd worry. With the possibility of raising children in the future, I was truly grateful, as I'd likely need my parents' help. My family, including relatives, all lived nearby. As a child, my cousin Henry used to play with me a lot. So, starting a new life near my parents was a dream come true. After moving in, I quickly realized something about Ben. He didn't do any housework at all. But as I became a full-time housewife, I thought I was okay with it. However, as time passed, I realized he wasn't just avoiding chores, he was also making a mess everywhere. No matter how much I cleaned, it would quickly become untidy again. I did bring it up with him once. Hey, can you try to keep the room a bit tidier? Like, at least put your dirty clothes in the laundry basket? I tried to say it as gently as I could. But he didn't like being told what to do. It's bothersome, I don't want to, he replied curtly. Sighing, I picked up his scattered clothes. Aside from his messiness, there wasn't much else to complain about. On his days off, he would take me out on dates. We went to see movies we liked or visited limited-time art exhibits. It was a fulfilling married life. However, things started to change when I found out I was pregnant. When my period was unusually late, I checked and got a positive result. I immediately went to the OBGYN and was told I was pregnant. I was overjoyed at the thought of having a child with him. Just knowing I had the person I loved's child inside me made the world seem brighter. When Ben got home that day, I couldn't wait to share the big news.
Guess what? I'm pregnant,
I announced, unable to hide my excitement. Really? Ben seemed taken aback. Yes, really. I'm 2 months along. The baby will be here in 10 months, so we have some time, but it's so exciting. I noticed a cloud of confusion shadow his face.
2 months?
Yes. He seemed to mull over something. What's wrong? Aren't you happy?
Well, it's just that.
Ben responded cryptically, leaving me hanging without any further explanation. Did he not want a child with me? We had casually discussed children before marriage, and he seemed eager to have as many as possible. So why wasn't he sharing my joy now? Despite feeling unsettled, the fact remained, I was pregnant. I tried to convince myself that he was just caught off guard. After all, it's often said that fatherhood takes time to sink in. It wouldn't be surprising if he needed time to adjust to the sudden news of pregnancy. But from that day on, he became noticeably distant. He offered no help with household chores, even as I struggled with morning sickness. I knew he wasn't keen on housework, but I had hoped he'd step up when I was in need. I'm sorry, but I'm feeling really sick today. I don't think I can cook, I told Ben before he left for work.
What?
His response was far from sympathetic.
I've never cooked before, and you expect me to start now? Pregnancy isn't an illness. You're a stay-at-home wife, Emma. Your job is the household, sick or not. I go to work even when I'm not feeling well.
He glared at me as if he was in the right. Sure, he went to work even when feeling under the weather, but everyone's condition is different. To me, barely able to get out of bed, his words felt harsh. But I really can't move, I pleaded with him. He snorted dismissively. Fine. I'll eat out today, he said, leaving the house. I never thought it would come to this, I sighed to myself. I had always believed that we would build a happy family together. But his attitude changed since my pregnancy was disheartening. Had I been so wrong about him? That night, he returned home drunk. I had barely eaten all day due to feeling nauseous. I hoped, maybe foolishly, that he might have brought something back for me to eat, but he came empty-handed. Given his recent behavior, I couldn't help but feel resigned to it. Was I just an afterthought to him? Could it be that he doesn't even want a child? That thought saddened me deeply. Even as morning sickness passed and I entered the stable period, his attitude didn't change. In fact, it felt like he became harsher as I got better.
One of these days, my colleagues want to come over to our place,
he announced one day after work.
Colleagues? How many?
5. Might be more.
I want you to cook for them.
Don't serve anything subpar.
I don't want them to think my wife can't cook.
What? 5 is quite a lot. Can our place even accommodate that many? Plus, I don't think I can handle that much right now. Even though I was in a stable period, I didn't feel up to hosting and cooking for a large group. Besides cooking, there'd be a lot to manage. The thought of handling it all by myself was overwhelming.
It'll be fine, you're in your stable period now. So, this weekend, expect them. And remember, don't embarrass me.
He said this nonchalantly and whistled his way to the bathroom. I was filled with anxiety. True to his word, he brought 5 colleagues over that weekend. 4 men and 1 woman, an odd balance that made me wonder. But considering he worked in sales at a trading company, maybe female employees were few. Hi, I'm and looking forward to today, the only woman, and greeted cheerfully. With her long hair swept to the side and striking features, she was notably pretty. She looked to be in her late 20s, younger than me, and her elegance made me instantly nervous. Nice to meet you. My husband always speaks highly of you all. I can't offer much, but please make yourselves at home. Trying to act the part of a boss's wife, I ushered everyone to their seats. As I started preparing the meal in the kitchen, Ben and his 6 guests chatted about work and rumors, and seemed to be the life of the party, nodding and interjecting with sharp comments. I felt entirely out of place in that circle. Resolved to stay in the background, I continued my work quietly. When I served the meal, everyone seemed to enjoy it. Is this cream stew made with soy milk? And asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Yes, that's right. I'm allergic to milk, so I use soy milk for dishes that usually require it. Interesting. And seemed to accept my explanation and resumed eating. Come on, just because you're allergic to milk doesn't mean you should serve our guests with soy milk. Use real milk next time. Ben chimed in. Expecting such a remark, I couldn't help but sigh. I need to eat too, so it has to be soy milk. You could have made separate dishes, he retorted. But I can't taste it if I do that. Our colleagues looked on, shocked by our conversation. Sorry, everyone. She claims to be allergic to milk. It's probably just a preference. Ben scoffed. The colleagues seemed uncomfortable, not sure how to react. Soy milk is delicious too. Please, enjoy your meal while it's hot, I said, trying to keep the mood light. Onlyan seemed deep in thought, remaining silent. The dinner went by, leaving me exhausted. I hoped he might thank me, but he just went to bed without a word. Our communication had dwindled. And this, along with his dismissive remarks about my allergy, made me feel increasingly frustrated. Months passed, and I was now 10 months pregnant. He kept coming home late, and we barely talked. The absence of our previous joyful dates filled me with loneliness. As the baby's arrival neared, I longed to cherish our time together. But he never initiated any moments like that. Then one day, he entered the living room, carrying a large bag and a familiar cup. It was from a coffee chain we used to frequent during happier times. I'm going on a business trip for 3 days. I went for a walk this morning and stumbled upon this coffee shop, so I bought this. Soy latte, remember? Yes, it's been a while. It was unusual for him to go for a walk in the morning. Stumbling upon a coffee shop and buying soy lattes seemed out of character, considering his recent behavior. He waited with a smile for me to take the soy latte. Was this a change of heart? I felt a glimmer of hope that the kind Ben I knew was returning. I wanted to go for walks with him again. Maybe after the baby was settled. I eagerly took the soy latte and drank it. It tasted familiar at first, but something was off. Is this milk? By the time I realized, it was too late. The cup slipped from my grasp. Ben's face twisted into a satisfied smirk. Hard to breathe. My breathing became labored as I slumped to the ground. I've always had my doubts. Is the child in your belly really mine? He questioned. What? I was utterly shocked by his accusation, suggesting the baby might belong to someone else. When you said you were 2 months pregnant, it didn't add up. I couldn't recall any encounter from 2 months ago. But that's... I wanted to explain to him that he was misunderstanding something, but I couldn't find my breath to defend myself. The numbers don't add up. You've been cheating. His accusation resonated in my ears. Despite not having much of the cafe latte, I felt terribly ill. 10 months pregnant, and instead of showing remorse for making me drink milk, an allergen, he was accusing me of infidelity. No, it's not like that. Help me. I didn't have the energy to clearly deny his suspicion. My raspy voice burst in front of him and quickly faded away. Acting won't help. I'm not fooled. Allergies aren't that serious. Convinced I was cheating, he, instead of helping me in my agony, left the house, still doubting me. What should I do? It's all over. With the last of my strength, I tried to call someone on my mobile phone. But my weak hands let the phone slip away. Please. Someone help. Desperately crying out in my mind, my consciousness began to fade. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was the white walls and ceiling, and I realized I was in a hospital. I was saved. As I felt relieved, I noticed someone's face peering in from the edge of my vision. Emma! You're awake! Henry. It was Henry, my cousin who lived nearby. Emma, you called me, and when I answered, I heard nothing at first, so I thought it was a mistake. But then I heard labored breathing and realized something was wrong. I rushed to your house, the front door was open, and I found you collapsed in the living room. It was a shock. I called an ambulance and had you taken to the hospital right away. Henry earnestly explained what happened after I collapsed. I remembered calling him just before I collapsed. He had always been like a big brother to me, caring for me. I thought he would come if there was an emergency. But before I could ask for help, I dropped the phone. I was in awe of him for sensing the emergency and rushing to help. "I'll call the doctor." "Wait here," he said and left the room. After a while, he returned with the doctor. The doctor explained that I had an anaphylactic shock due to drinking milk, but somehow managed to save me and the baby. Hearing that just a few more minutes could have endangered the baby's life, or left me with lasting disabilities, sent chills down my spine. My being here, awake in the hospital, was all thanks to Henry. "Henry, thank you, really." "No need to thank me." "But how did this happen?" His confusion was understandable. It was unthinkable for me, allergic to milk, to drink it willingly. "Well, actually, I told him everything about my marriage with Ben up to this point. Ben and I thought we were meant for each other and got married. We had similar hobbies and always enjoyed our dates. Life was happy after marriage, at least for a while. But as soon as I got pregnant, his attitude changed drastically. Looking back, I still can't pinpoint what went wrong." Henry, arms crossed, seemed to be pondering the reason too. "Ben's behavior changed after you told him about the pregnancy, right?" "Yes. When I said I was 2 months pregnant, he thought the calculation was off. He convinced himself I cheated and did this as revenge, I guess." Henry's face hardened as I replied. "Revenge or not, this is too much. Feeding you milk when you're allergic. What was he thinking?" Anger was clearly visible in his eyes. I felt moved by his anger on my behalf. "I can't believe it. If it weren't for you, Henry, neither the baby nor I would have made it." Just thinking about what could have happened without his help sent shivers down my spine. Filled with a mix of relief and a desire for retribution against Ben, I asked, "What should I do about Ben?" Henry, seemingly pondering the same thing, asked me back. "Of course, I can't just let this go. I need to see that he's punished." As I responded, "If that's the case," he began, "I have a plan." After hearing his plan to deal with Ben, I couldn't wait to confront him. The plan was to be executed upon my discharge from the hospital when I first saw Ben. I resolved to follow Henry's advice when I met Ben. But the plan had to be put into action sooner than I thought. 3 days into my hospital stay, I received a call from Ben. It happened while Henry was visiting me. I hesitated to pick up the phone, and the call ended. But Ben called again immediately. So persistent. I muttered, staring at the incessantly ringing phone. The phone stopped briefly, only to ring once more. As the cycle repeated, I looked at Henry, silently seeking advice. "Let's execute the plan now, a bit earlier than expected." "Understood," I replied. Nervously, I picked up the mobile phone, pressed the call button, turned on the speaker, and placed it on the table. "Hello, Emma?" "Finally, you answer." "Seriously? I returned from my business trip, and you were nowhere to be found. I've been searching all over for you. Running away from home, what's that about? Thanks to you, I haven't had dinner." His angry voice filled the hospital room. If I had held the phone to my ear, it would have hurt from the loudness. Ben, showing no concern for me, immediately started yelling. He was the one who made me drink milk and sent me to the hospital. His complaint about not having dinner was ridiculous, considering he never cooks. If he can't cook, he should eat out, but he doesn't even do that. It's like dealing with a child. While listening to Ben's angry words, I exchanged a resolute nod with Henry. "Excuse me, but who am I speaking to?" I deliberately lowered my tone to confuse Ben. "What? What are you talking about?" Ben sounded baffled on the other end. Henry and I exchanged a knowing look and smirked. "I don't know who you are." "The mobile phone screen says Ben, so are you perhaps my husband?" "What?" He sounded completely perplexed. It made sense. After repeatedly calling his wife, he finally got through, only to hear nonsensical words. I glanced at Henry again and smirked. Henry nodded in agreement. Then Henry took the mobile phone from me and began to speak to Ben. Hello, Ben. My name is Henry. I heard Emma's voice on the phone and took over the call. What? Henry? Who are you? Are you the father of Emma's child? So you're the one she's been cheating with? Ben hastily accused Henry in a stern tone. Cheating? What are you talking about? I'm Emma's cousin. Actually, Emma is currently suffering from amnesia. Amnesia? Yes, this was the plan Henry and I devised. I would pretend to have lost my memory to confuse Ben. The goal was to get Ben to admit that he was the one who gave me the milk. The plan was supposed to be executed when we met in person, but Ben's call accelerated things. No problem, though. It might even be more convenient over the phone since he can't see my face. Don't you know? Emma collapsed from anaphylactic shock 3 days ago due to a cafe latte she drank. Anaphy, what? Ben seemed clueless about such matters, tilting his head on the other end of the line. She nearly died after ingesting milk, an allergen. The baby was almost affected too. Emma lost her memory due to the psychological shock. You were the one who gave her the drink, right? Henry's tone was stern. Ben let out a small cry of disbelief. No. What do you mean no? It was me who gave it to her, and told me to do it. Ben's voice trembled. Hearing this shocking revelation, Henry and I exchanged glances. Then, from the other end of the phone, a woman's voice exclaimed, "Wait a minute." We were stunned. It was Anne. I remembered her well as one of Ben's colleagues who had visited our house before. She was the beautiful one. Was Ben cheating with Anne? Why am I getting blamed? You were the one who made her drink it, weren't you? You said giving her the allergic milk would make her bedridden for days, so we could go on a trip without her noticing, right? Yeah, but you gave her too much. Ben and Anne began arguing. From their conversation, it seemed Anne had known about my milk allergy and planned to make me slightly ill so they could travel without worries. Ben and Anne were clearly having an affair. After all his accusations of my supposed infidelity, Ben was the one cheating. I felt nauseated by his hypocrisy. I exchanged a look with Henry and took back the phone. Thank you for your time. I've recorded everything you just said. Hearing my voice, supposedly amnesiac, Ben and gasped on the other end. What? What do you mean? Sorry, the amnesia was a lie. It was a ruse to get you to admit you gave me the milk. Thanks to that, I also got your confession of cheating. I'll be claiming a substantial compensation. I said it cheerfully, and Ben and both shouted in disbelief. How foolish can they be? Henry and I were astounded by their lack of awareness of the severity of their actions. That's terrible. You were cheating too, weren't you? Then the compensation should be split, right? No, it's your fault for cheating first. I thought of cheating with and because of you. So, no need for compensation, right? Ben's triumphant tone was grossly misguided. When did I say I cheated? It's obvious if you count the pregnancy weeks. Ben was clearly mistaken. I set him straight. Pregnancy weeks are counted from the end of the last menstrual period. Not knowing that and suspecting me of cheating, then deciding to cheat yourself, that's despicable. I'm divorcing you. Prepare for a hefty compensation. I yelled with all my might and hung up forcefully. Then I blocked Ben's calls. Finally, peace returned. Henry, really, thank you. No, I didn't want to see Emma sad. I'm glad you could set Ben straight. We sighed in relief, facing each other. I was going to have a child without a father, but it's decidedly better than having a father like Ben. Later, Henry and I submitted the voice recorder data with Ben and Anne's confessions to the police. They were promptly arrested and are currently being interrogated. A colleague of Ben's, who visited us before, said it was clear even at their workplace that Ben and Anne were together. One of the colleague, Mike, confessed. I regret not speaking up sooner. But I understand it takes courage to expose a colleague's wrongdoing. I reassured Mike it was okay. Ben's previous engagement had been called off due to his sudden change in behavior. A revelation that made perfect sense. Additionally, it was discovered that Ben and had used company business trips as a cover for their personal vacations multiple times, leading to their dismissal for misusing company funds. After their release from prison, they'll be starting life from scratch, having lost their jobs. The compensation they owe me is substantial. They paid it off with loans, but I wonder what they plan to do next. Sometimes I think they might be better off in prison, given the gravity of their crimes. Taking my allergy lightly, poisoning me with milk, and their infidelity. I have no sympathy for them. I hope they deeply reflect on their actions while with the police. Meanwhile, I gave birth to a baby girl and am currently living at my parents' house, where they help me raise her. Henry often visits and helps with the baby, which I greatly appreciate. When she gets a bit older, how about we go out together? Henry suggested sincerely. Yes. I nodded with a smile. Perhaps there's a future where Henry and I end up together. These hopeful thoughts fill my mind. A life without kids is just miserable. My daughter Laura is both adorable and a genius. William said that with a smirk, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of uncontrollable anger. It was like he'd forgotten all he's done to me, and then he just came up to talk to me with that nonsense. I couldn't help but be furious. However, I remembered the situation I was in and managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets mad at it, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and proudly said, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter, Jasmine." I'm probably wearing the kind of smile I imagine. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me. "What?" He looked at us, his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. His mistress Kate, who was grinning just like him until a moment ago, also seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I started talking to Jasmine. "My name is Isabel, and I'm a 51-year-old office worker. I have a daughter, and people are often surprised when I tell them she's 12. I did marry late, but there were reasons for that. I have a history of divorce, and I didn't have children at that time. I met my ex-husband William in an arrangement that was almost like an arranged marriage. A friend of mine worried about me always working and not getting married, and threw a party for me. That's where William took a liking to me, and I received his advances. Even so, I wasn't interested at first and was reluctant to respond to his actions. Yet, as he approached me persistently, I gradually started to return his feelings. Eventually, we started dating and soon got married. After marriage, William was serious about having children. Being in my late 30s, I felt a lot of pressure. I don't know if it was because of that, but we couldn't have a baby for a long time. Gradually, William's attitude turned cold, and he started to look down on me. "What, infertile? Were you here? Did you pick up the dry cleaning I asked for?" He called me infertile, treating me almost like a slave. It was so frustrating, I struggled to find a solution. I went to the hospital imagining the worst, but there was nothing wrong with me. I was even told that stress might be the cause, which left me feeling hopeless. I tried changing my diet, taking supplements. I tried everything, but still couldn't get pregnant. I suggested William get tested, thinking maybe the problem wasn't with me. "Listen, William. I went to the hospital, and they found nothing wrong. So, maybe it's worth considering that the issue might be with you, and you should get tested." As soon as I said that, his face turned red with anger. "What? You're saying I'm the problem? It's just that you can't get pregnant, don't suspect me." "But there's nothing wrong with me, and I've been under treatment for a long time. If we still can't have a baby, it might be because of you." "No way. I'm always fine. The problem is definitely with you, okay?" He completely rejected my suggestion, blaming me. At first, I fought back, but it's hard when someone keeps saying you're the one at fault. Gradually, I became exhausted, and one day, his words made it clear that I couldn't do it anymore. "What's the point of being a woman if you can't even have a baby?" He said it so disdainfully, and I couldn't respond. It wasn't that I agreed with his words. Instead, I was shocked at why I had to be spoken to like that. I worked while managing household chores, and I thought I had devoted myself to him, who was also working. Nevertheless, Just because I couldn't have a baby, I never expected to be so thoroughly negated. With no emotional support and losing my motivation, I couldn't bring myself to ask him to get tested again. The thought of hearing the same words again frightened me so much that I couldn't speak up. Sensing that, he started commanding me to do various things.
Man, I'm tired. I want a different drink, not the usual beer today. Hey, you can't get pregnant, so you must be free, right? Come home right now.
Laughing smugly, he treated me like a slave. If I showed any sign of arguing back, he'd hurl even more abuse at me. Still, I endured and just kept going day by day. You'd think I'd better divorce him if I'm putting up with all that. However, I married late and thought I wouldn't be able to marry again if I let that go. Also, I was embarrassed about divorcing and couldn't take that step. Time passed without me being able to do anything, and I turned 38. That's when things took a sudden turn. Even then, I was enduring harassment almost every day about infertility while continuing to work.
Hey, you should know what I don't like by now. I can't eat such terrible food. This is why infertile women.
That day, after he snapped at me like that, I couldn't hold back anymore and argued back.
What does the meal have to do with not having a baby? I can't stand it anymore. Enough is enough.
When I said so, William jumped up and started yelling at me.
What's with that attitude? You can't even fulfill your role as a woman, and now you complain to me when I come back from work.
Suddenly bombarded with nonsensical complaints, I got furious.
What do you mean by a woman's role? If it's about having a baby, you have a responsibility too. I got tested and there was nothing wrong. But you refused to get tested, trying to escape your responsibility. And yet, you only complain about me, which I think is unfair.
He seemed a bit taken aback by my rare rebuttal, but his silence was brief, and he soon started hurling abuses again.
Why are you so stubborn? In times like these, she would immediately reflect and apologize.
Hearing his words, it was my turn to be stunned. Before I could ask who he was talking about, he made a sheepish look and quickly looked away. Then, he left the house without a word. He didn't come home that day, and my distrust in him grew. From his words, it was clear there was another woman. That meant he was cheating, and if I pursued it, I might be able to divorce him. It wouldn't be because I couldn't have children, but because of William's affair. Thinking that, I soon took action. I searched online for a nearby private detective agency and hired them. William was apparently cheating recently. I had them investigate his mistress and his behavior. A few weeks after my request, the results came from the agency. During that time, William would come home but wouldn't meet my eyes. He seemed to be avoiding me, and the constant verbal abuse had stopped. Surprised at how comfortably I was living, I regretted not taking action sooner. I should have done this earlier. While thinking that, I looked at the report. It contained the fact that William was having an affair with evidence. It also included a report on his mistress. Her name was Kate. She was 23 years old, naturally younger than both of us. It seemed they started dating soon after I first suggested William get tested. So, he had been cheating for a few years. Angered by the fact, I decided to divorce him and started preparations. While I was preparing, he stayed quiet. That allowed me to steadily proceed, and I finally confronted him about the divorce.
William, there's something I need to talk about. It's not about the test, it's more important.
When I said that, he looked annoyed as he was just back from work.
What now at this time? I've got something to tell you, too. Make it quick.
Saying so wearily, he still seemed to be listening while operating his mobile phone. Before he changed his mind, I quickly presented him with the report from the private detective agency.
You're having an affair. I've had it properly investigated, so there's no escaping it. With both the baby issue and your affair, I can't take it anymore. I want a divorce.
Saying that, I also presented a half-filled divorce application as a sign of my resolve. Far from being flustered, he smirked and took the divorce papers from my hand.
Ha, you're well prepared. Such perfect timing makes me doubt your predictive abilities.
As he said that and operated his mobile phone, the sound of the front door opening echoed.
Good evening. Nice to meet you. I'm Kate, the one who's going to marry William next.
Entering from the entrance was the person in the photo enclosed in the report. Younger and cuter than she appeared in the photo, Kate greeted me with a grin.
I was just about to introduce you today. I never imagined you'd prepare the divorce papers. If you were always this considerate, I might have stayed, but it's too late now.
While half laughing, he entered the living room with the divorce papers in hand. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, I stood frozen, unable to grasp the situation. After a while, William came out of the living room, having signed the divorce papers. Handing them to me with a smirk, he said,
"It saved me a lot of trouble. We're no longer a couple, so leave immediately. Kate's pregnant, and I want her to spend her time as stress-free as possible."
With Kate and William smirking maliciously, I lost myself. I snatched the divorce papers from his hand and rushed into my room. Then, I grabbed my already packed bags and left the house without a word. 13 years later since then, I was visiting a project I had been involved in that had just been completed. I work as a specialist consultant, and this time I was in charge of designing a condominium that was disaster-resistant and supportive of childcare. At that time, after being introduced to Kate by William, I took refuge in a nearby Holiday Inn. I waited for dawn, then submitted the divorce papers to City Hall and moved from hotel to motel. Eventually, I moved into a house and devoted myself to my work. My mood lightened after divorcing William, and work went smoothly, with increased business opportunities and networking. Thanks to that, I was appointed as a project leader, which led to this urban development project. Now that the long-term project was finally complete, I felt relieved. There was a small event, and the place was crowded. Suddenly, I heard a familiar, unpleasant voice.
"Hey, long time no see. Still all alone? I'm here to buy a condo for a family of 3. Not that it matters to you."
I regretfully turned towards the voice and regretted it. There stood William and Kate. Between them, there was their daughter, who must have been in Kate's womb at that time.
A life without kids is just miserable. My daughter is both adorable and a genius.
Seeing William's smirking face, uncontrollable anger surged within me. It was like he forgot all he'd done, casually speaking to me like that. I couldn't help but be furious. As remembering my situation, I managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets angry, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and said proudly, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter." I was probably wearing the kind of smile I had imagined. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me.
"Huh?"
He looked at us with his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. Grinning just like him until a moment ago, Kate seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I spoke to Jasmine. "Found a spot you want to shoot at?" When I asked, Jasmine smiled brightly and nodded.
"I want to shoot in front of the flower bed you insisted on to the end."
She pointed to the flower bed and ran towards it, picking up the equipment beside me. As I watched her tomboyish figure, Kate screamed,
"That's Jasmine from the video sharing site, right? Why is she calling you Mom?"
At Kate's words, their daughter spoke up.
"That's right. Wow, meeting the real deal. Hey, can I get an autograph?" "That's a good idea, Laura. You really are a genius."
Impressed by their arrogant attitude, true to their nature as parent and child, I shrugged my shoulders and firmly declined. "Sorry, but you can't. Jasmine does video posting voluntarily. She enjoys shooting and editing. It's not about being famous. Sure, she's become well known, but that's not what she wants to do."
"Well, it wouldn't hurt, right? After all, Laura is a genius. A combination of a popular person and a genius makes a good story."
Listening to William proudly proclaiming his daughter's genius, I asked, weary, "What exactly makes your daughter a genius?" "So far, I only see a lack of common sense and arrogance."
"How dare you say that? Laura has a lot of things to be good at."
I wanted to see concrete examples of her genius, but found nothing specific in Kate's claims, causing me to sigh. Seeing that, William, displeased with my attitude, began to brag more about Laura.
"You know, Laura never sticks to anything. Too much of a genius, she masters everything too quickly. She's tried so many hobbies but gets bored as soon as she excels. Oh boy, the troubles of having a genius child.
Hearing what hardly sounded like a boast, I grew tired. Without much response to his bragging, I moved towards where Jasmine was filming. Behind me, William's family were saying something, but I ignored them and called out to my daughter. Jasmine, how's the shooting going? Let's go to a cafe when you're done. Jasmine was surrounded by a crowd of people watching her film. Some of them seemed to realize she was Jasmine, making the scene quite lively.
Just need to shoot the ending, and we're done. Hang on a bit longer.
She cheerfully answered, waving to the people around her before starting the final scene.
Hey, Jasmine! Film with me!
In an oblivious moment, Laura interrupted the filming. Noticing it, Jasmine smiled at Laura and resumed shooting. After finally finishing, Jasmine found herself encircled by onlookers. Like Laura, they asked for autographs, but she politely declined. Instead, she chatted and interacted joyfully with those who approached her. She was continuing her activities because she enjoyed them, not because she wanted fame. Despite her fame, she never boasted about it. Of course, she hadn't thought about giving autographs, so she couldn't offer one. Then, it would be good to communicate a bit as a way of returning the favor to those who approached her. That's what Jasmine has been thinking and acting on. Laura had interrupted her earlier, but Jasmine wanted to maintain her composure in fact. I wonder if Laura really understood Jasmine's gentle refusal. After finishing conversations with most people, Jasmine was about to leave. Laura approached her predictably. She didn't understand Jasmine's intentions.
The filming's done, right? So, film with me next.
Seeing Jasmine staring at Laura in astonishment, I couldn't hold back and intervened. Sorry, but Jasmine doesn't do collaborations. That smile earlier was just a polite response to your interruption during filming.
What's that, pleasantries? Learning such things as a child, aren't you raising her wrong?
Kate interjected sarcastically, looking down at Jasmine with crossed arms. Jasmine briefly frowned but remained silent, not retorting to Kate. Seeing that, Kate became more confident and pressed further.
So, are you saying Laura isn't worth filming with? Laura can do anything, she's a genius. It's actually an opportunity to enhance your image. Why don't you read the situation better?
Overwhelmed by that, Jasmine looked at me for guidance. Receiving her gaze, I sighed and replied to Kate, enough already. You keep calling your daughter a genius, but there's not a single concrete example. Isn't there something more substantial to boast about? As I said it, the people around us, who had been listening to our conversation, agreed. Pressed by their words, Kate made a displeased face, but Laura seemed unfazed. Instead, she proudly boasted about her accomplishments.
I got an award at a piano recital. It was for practicing well. And also, at dance school for learning a whole song. I also got an award for never missing school. I've been awarded a lot.
Laura was at least over grade 7. Thinking about it, her statements seemed awkward, to say the least. Unaware of that, Laura looked at us expectantly for praise. I exchanged a troubled look with Jasmine, and we could only make helpless faces. The people around us seemed to feel the same, with some even bursting into laughter. Even Kate seemed to read the atmosphere and tried to change the subject forcibly.
By the way, since you're active like this, how much do you earn? You can't possibly afford to live in a condo like this, can you?
Her question seemed desperate, but I decided to reply to avoid rehashing the atmosphere. Thankfully, we're quite popular on the video sharing site. Of course, we earn an income, but it's saved for Jasmine's future and for buying necessary filming equipment. Sure, this condo is attractive, but we have a house, so we don't need it. Besides, I was part of creating this place, so the success fee is substantial. My current husband runs a company, and combined with his income, moving here wouldn't be a bad idea. I told her everything she might have wanted to know. Predictably, Kate looked displeased and glared at Jasmine and me. Hearing my story, William seemed too surprised to retort. Whereas, Kate was ever bold, and tried to ingratiate herself with me.
So, you created this place. Then, with just a word from you, we could live here, right? Our kids are about the same age, so out of kindness, could you help us?
I couldn't understand what she meant by kindness, but I had no intention of agreeing. Just as I was about to firmly refuse, Laura asked eagerly by misunderstanding something.
Can you really help us live in this condo? We want to live here. Please.
At her words, I sighed deeply in exasperation. I decided to set the record straight for once and all.
Sorry, but I can't guarantee you can live here. Sure, I might be able to refer you to the management company with my connections, but there are screenings. Things like what job you do, your income, and your prospects. I'm not in charge of the screenings, so it's not guaranteed.
It's up to you, so good luck with that. Hearing that, Kate made her face, while Laura didn't seem to fully understand. Then William butted in, making an unreasonable demand.
My daughter's asking, so make it happen. If you have the connections for creating this place, get us through the screening.
Everyone around whispered at his absurd demand. I pondered how to explain the obvious fact, my head aching.
You can't just interfere in the screening process, can you? That's obviously out of my jurisdiction. If you want to live here, overcome it with your own efforts.
When I said that, William suddenly became enraged and started to rampage. He began ripping out the flowers from the nearby flower bed and throwing them at me. I stood in the way to protect Jasmine from getting hit while scolding him. However, for some reason, Kate and Laura followed his lead and started doing the same. Furthermore, while hurling the flowers, Kate shouted insults at us, and Laura hurled verbal abuse at Jasmine. I was busy protecting Jasmine, but people around us started to intervene to stop them. Nonetheless, the three of them refused to listen and kept throwing anything they could grab. Kate picked up a stone lying nearby and was about to throw it. I grabbed her arm to stop her from hitting Jasmine, but Kate carried away and pushed me. Thus, I fell into the flower bed, hitting my head. Seeing that, people around us condemned them more vehemently and tried desperately to stop them. Yet, the three of them continued to act wildly and were soon restrained. Someone had called the police, though I didn't know who, and they arrived upon hearing the commotion.
Who called the cops?
As the police officers restrained him, William shouted, but no one responded. Kate also was restrained by the police and tried to find out who had reported them. Laura stopped her tantrum but began crying upon seeing her parents being held by the police. The noisy scene was suddenly overtaken by the commanding voice of a police officer.
You're under arrest for obstructing official duties.
With those words, the place became silent instantly. It seemed William had attacked a police officer and was being arrested on the spot. Holding my head and hugging Jasmine, who was close to tears, I watched the scene unfold. As William was taken away, Kate and Laura were also escorted to the police station. The three of them were put in a police car and gradually disappeared from view. After such a huge uproar caused by William's family, I felt drained as they were easily taken away by the police. Meanwhile, I came to myself by Jasmine's desperate yell.
Mom, you're hurt. Should we go to the hospital? Otherwise, you will.
Affected by the chaos, Jasmine finally burst into tears. I hugged her, apologizing for involving her in such an incident. The people around us also expressed their concern, making me feel cared for. Though I was in pain, the fact that Jasmine was safe made it seem insignificant. Every time someone asked, I assured them I was fine, and soon the sound of an ambulance siren was heard. Apparently, someone had called an ambulance as well. When the ambulance arrived, I was taken away with the police officers. As I boarded the ambulance with Jasmine, I glanced back at the flower bed where the flowers had been torn out. As being involved in the construction of a large condominium, I had wanted to mitigate its oppressive presence. So, I established a park on the property and planted flower beds there. I hoped the park would become a place of rest and foster enjoyable conversations. I met my current husband in a park, taking a break from work and admiring the flower beds. He approached me, and we started talking, eventually becoming close. Initially, we only met during lunch breaks, but gradually we began dining out and eventually married. Soon after, we were blessed with Jasmine, and despite it being a late pregnancy, she was born safely. That park with the flower beds had brought me happiness. Therefore, in the projects I was involved in, I wanted to create opportunities for others to find happiness. That was the idea behind that flower bed. Its destruction saddened me deeply, and I was quite shocked. Upon reaching the hospital, treatment began immediately, and I needed a few stitches. Thankfully, it wasn't visible, much to my relief. Seeing it, Jasmine seemed reassured, and by the time we left the hospital, she was smiling again. While waiting for the bill, I was questioned by the police and decided to file a complaint. I also decided to hire a lawyer and ensure that William's family faced appropriate consequences. Thanks to that, Kate was arrested for assault. According to the lawyer, with her parents in police custody, Laura was taken in by Kate's parents. I thought that was unfortunate enough, but she was in for strict re-education from her grandparents. Taken in by her grandparents, she was apparently reprimanded and criticized greatly for her usual behavior. Due to her young age, it seems she is being disciplined strictly for rehabilitation. It will likely lead to challenging days ahead for not only William and Kate but also for Laura. As for me, my injury has been healing well since then. I had the stitches removed recently, so there's no significant injury anymore. Jasmine has become even more popular since that day and has been busy. It turns out that it was one of her followers who called the police and ambulance. After the filming ended, sensing the tense atmosphere, Jasmine quickly switched to live streaming. Thanks to that, when the brawl escalated, one of her followers took action. We are truly grateful for that, as it helped bring the situation under control. Afterward, Jasmine wanted to thank the person and made a call out in a video, but no one came forward. So, we decided to post another video expressing our gratitude. When we went to film the video at the park where the disturbance occurred, we found the flower bed beautifully restored. Apparently, volunteers had fixed it up after the incident, which was a relief. Since then, things have been going surprisingly well. My work on the condominium has led to an increased evaluation of my job. I've been promoted and now am the head of the planning department. Jasmine's video views have skyrocketed, and she continues to post videos joyfully. My current husband is very concerned about us and has been quite worried. Though I'm fully healed and there are no hindrances to my life, he still occasionally checks on my injury. I'm really happy to be with the kind-hearted husband and Jasmine grow up healthy. There are no problems in my work or family life. I look forward to spending more happy times with three of us.
Dropping out and living off a pension, isn't that just like a dead weight who doesn't understand the struggles of the young? Caught in a fire and still not a bit spirited. Really, society's dead weight lives the longest, huh?
Tiana, my eldest son's wife, said this laughing, without a hint of malice. It was the last straw for me. Don't think getting disowned is the end of it. Divine retribution will come one day. Just you wait. My name is Violet, I'm 75. When did it start? The words I mutter when I get moving became,
Here we go.
ouch. Sometimes, I say them even when I'm not in pain. Back when my body issues were fewer than now, and I had just turned 60. A shocking piece of news landed between my recently retired husband, Cody, and me. Our eldest son, Ethan, not particularly bright and with kindness as his only trait, was getting married. Ethan wanted a family meeting, and Cody and I joyfully agreed. Who could have chosen our unremarkable Ethan? On the day of the meeting, Tiana, a well-dressed woman, appeared at our house. Not especially beautiful or flashy. But her behavior was elegant and refined, perhaps due to good upbringing, leaving Cody and me speechless.
You didn't just bring some secretary pretending to be your girlfriend, did you?
I couldn't help but ask Ethan. But as we listened to them, her background became clear. She was the daughter of a chain of Italian restaurants. With two older brothers, she wasn't expected to take over the family business. But if something happened to her brothers, Ethan might have to step in. I wondered if Ethan could handle such a responsibility, but the warm atmosphere between him and Tiana made it seem possible. They were more in love than I imagined. We approved their marriage, and they wed. Everything seemed perfect. Then one day, Tiana called.
Oh, Tiana, what's up?
Calling so suddenly.
Violet. I heard from Ethan yesterday. Is it true that Cody dropped out?
Yes, that's right. He was the youngest, and our parents couldn't afford to send him to school.
Why do you ask?
Dropping out was common and not unusual. And Ethan's parents' education had nothing to do with his marriage. I optimistically failed to understand the intention behind her question.
And you're not working now, right? Just retired. Enjoying a leisurely pension life.
I replied with a laugh, but the air over the phone turned heavy.
Tiana, something wrong? I'm a bit confused. So, you're saying he never really accomplished anything in society and now just lives off a pension?
What? Both Cody and I had worked and paid taxes. I didn't know if we contributed to society, but we hadn't been a burden. I didn't understand her point, but I felt looked down upon. Finally, that day, she said,
"Let me think about this,"
and hung up. Wondering if I should tell Ethan about this, I consulted with Cody.
Tiana's intentions aren't clear, and it might be a misunderstanding. Let's wait and see.
That's what happened. 2 months later, Ethan and Tiana visited us during a long vacation. I hoped that Tiana had misunderstood something about the dropout issue. For their visit, I prepared seasonal ingredients and fancy seafood. But,
what's this?
Tiana, who came to help in the kitchen, looked at the ingredients and got furious. There were no known allergies, and serving shrimp and crab wasn't unusual. I had no idea why she was so angry.
Who decided to have a meal like this?
Well, it was Cody.
He did it because you guys were coming over. He is on a pension, right? Living comfortably off the big taxes we worked hard to pay. Please don't indulge in luxuries like everyone else.
Hey!
That's no way to talk. We don't even indulge in luxuries normally, and we've been paying into our pension all this time. That's the problem with you people. You benefit from everything, from healthcare to pensions, while young people like us work hard, knowing our future pensions will be almost non-existent. If you have money for luxuries, donate it to the younger generation.
While I stood there dumbfounded, she sighed again.
In my family, my parents and brothers all went to college, studied hard, and provide dedicated service to society and our customers every day. And they earn well, of course. Cody, he worked in a factory, right? Didn't study much and settled for low wages, just moving his body around, and his future was secured. How nice. We work hard but never feel it's enough for our efforts.
I couldn't tell if we were indeed better off than Tiana's family unless I compared our incomes. But, regardless, it wasn't fair for her to say all this. Does she even understand how the pension system works? I wondered. If you have so many complaints, then leave. I was about to say that when.
What's all this noise about?
Cody, who should have been at the grocery store with Ethan, appeared from behind.
Cody.
Tears welled up in my eyes, maybe because of the harsh words thrown at him. He had always worked hard for our family. He even gave up school for us. He's a respectable man who's been working tirelessly for us. He doesn't deserve to be looked down on like this.
Cody, can you please stop living so luxuriously? Huh?
With a haughty attitude and arms crossed, Tiana glared at him. This woman, she's still mocking Cody.
If you're living off a pension, please lead a modest life or save for your demise. We don't want our hard-earned money going to people like you.
Tiana, what's wrong?
I'm not living luxuriously or anything. No. Just preparing all these fine ingredients is a nuisance. We can afford this with our own money.
It's not like they're high-end ingredients. I just thought it'd be nice for today. If you're feeling uncomfortable.
That's not it. It makes me sick that people like you, who never studied properly and just continued a fool's job, live off pensions and eat like this.
I thought to myself, factory work varies, and without people manufacturing, you wouldn't have the car you came in. But I stayed silent. Nothing I said would get through to her. But Cody reacted differently.
I tried to be understanding because you're Ethan's wife, but this is too much.
I paled, realizing he was angry. He rarely gets angry, maybe once in every 8 years, more rarely than the Olympics. If he exploded now, Tiana would be in trouble. That's when it happened. From the back room, I heard an explosion and the sound of something collapsing.
Dad, Mom, Tiana. There's a fire in the back. Get out quick.
Guided by Ethan, who rushed and drenched with water, we managed to escape the house without harm. Exhausted, we all watched our home engulfed in flames.
It's good that everyone's safe,
Ethan muttered. Yes, I replied. It seemed like an electrical fault in the neighbor's house had caused the fire, which spread to ours. Almost everything except the second floor was burned, and the house was unlivable.
What a long vacation this turned out to be. What do we do now?
Cody mused. Yes. Watching us, Tiana said.
We're not going to take care of you.
We, who had not even thought of asking for such a thing, exchanged glances in surprise. What is this kid talking about?
When times like this come, isn't it like this? You old folks living on pensions don't have money, so you say, you're the eldest son, so you should take us in, right? I read it on the internet.
You wouldn't say something like that, would you, Cody?
Of course not. I wouldn't bother Tiana or Ethan with such things.
Cody, calmed by the fire and now exhausted, nodded. Ethan watched our exchange with a solemn expression. I was afraid to ask what he thought.
Just so you know, don't try to get closer to us just because our house burned down. Tiana, what's gotten into you? We never said we'd do anything like that.
Cody continued.
That's right.
He agreed with my words. It seemed like the anger was flaring up again.
People with no brains can't imagine what others might think. After all, how can you, living on pensions, rebuild your lives with no education?
Tiana laughed mockingly. I couldn't deny it. I wasn't sure about the cost of house repairs, and how much would the fire insurance cover. I had just heard that if it's a fire spread from somewhere else, suing the responsible party isn't an option. Beyond education, there aren't many places a 60-year-old can work.
Violet, you're just a high school graduate, but dropout Cody will just be a burden to you.
Tiana said this with a smile, seemingly without any malice. Anger welled up inside me.
You're still lively despite being caught in a fire. Society's burdens live the longest.
Before Cody could grab Tiana by the collar in response to her words, my slap should have exploded. But my slap didn't hit Tiana, it struck Ethan's left cheek.
Ethan! Why are you defending her? You're making a mockery of Dad.
Cody restrained me as I cried out, and Ethan stepped forward as if to shield Tiana.
I'm sorry,
Ethan muttered, looking down.
Does marrying mean your wife is more important? Are we, your family, nothing to you?
It's not like that. But I love her too, so whether she's wrong or right, I can't choose. My dear Ethan, whose only good trait was his kindness, had become merely indecisive. I had carried and raised Ethan with care. I understood his feelings. I would have liked to support his kind heart if possible. But I just couldn't get along with Tiana anymore.
That's enough. Dad and I will cut ties with her. We won't see you either.
I couldn't bring myself to say cut ties with Ethan too. My weakness was apparent. I might be called pathetic, but I just couldn't bear to easily sever ties with Ethan. I never imagined spending the last years of my life like this. My body trembled, whether from fear, anxiety, or the excitement of my outburst. And so, my husband and I, and Ethan and his wife, started walking separate paths. 10 years later, after various circumstances, we were living with Cedric, our second son, and his wife. 2 days after the fire, when Cedric was supposed to visit, I contacted him. Why don't you live with us? He said it so casually, and we've been living together ever since. Cedric's wife, Caddy, had been unwell since giving birth and struggled with household chores. Then came our house fire. It goes without saying that Cedric's suggestion to live with us had an ulterior motive. But in exchange for doing household chores, living rent-free was a good deal for us. Even if the household chores meant playing with the grandchildren or cooking, being able to see them grow up every day was a reward for us. We shared household duties with Caddy, and we took over entirely when she felt unwell, so there was no inconvenience at all. Living with us might actually be easier for them than when it was just the two of us. I never really minded or felt dissatisfied, but Cody isn't much of a housekeeper. After cutting ties with Tiana and leaving our burnt house, I felt a daily happiness, as if the words disposal of unnecessary items, huge success, were floating in my head. Then, one day, after finishing dinner and about to serve cookies I made with my grandchildren, the doorbell rang. "Hello?" Caddy answered in her usual manner.
Help!
And from the monitor came a voice. Those grave words made us brace for some emergency. "Tiana?" Caddy looked bewildered, alternating glances between the monitor and us. "Eh? Tiana?" I couldn't believe it and looked at the monitor, where Ethan and his wife stood. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't help but ask. "Please, we apologize for everything in the past, just help our company." The sight of Ethan and his wife asking for help through the monitor caught even me off guard. Worried the neighbors might think oddly of Cedric's family, I hurriedly opened the door. "What's this all about? Why so sudden?" I asked. Behind me stood Cody, and a little further back, Cedric watched us with concern, protecting his children and Caddy. "Our family business is about to go bankrupt." "The family business, United Capital Holdings? You've expanded since your marriage, it should be fine, right?" Indeed, her family business had grown rapidly since their marriage, now a respectable corporation. I knew from the newspapers a few years back that Ethan had joined the management, following her grandfather's wish to keep it family operated. But at this moment, I pretended not to know, although I was fully aware of their imminent bankruptcy and its reasons. Of course. They had to come to our house, and I could barely suppress a laugh. No. I mustn't laugh. I can't divulge details, but expanding so much has backfired. Can you help us without asking anything? Let me guess, you hired manager candidates thinking anyone would be fine as long as they were college graduates, and they did whatever they wanted? I know all about it. Cody was the one who reacted to her words. Like me, he, who knew everything, couldn't completely hide his amusement. "So you knew, Mr. Gourmet Iron Man," Tiana said, looking dejected. "Since living here, Cedric often takes me out to eat. Starting a blog turned out to be popular, what a hassle." Cody laughed. Since moving in with Cedric and his family, Cody, who loved food, was frequently taken out to various restaurants by Cedric. He started reviewing the flavors on a blog, which became popular for its honest depiction of minor local eateries. Now, he even writes articles for magazines, introducing recommended gourmet maps. Gourmet Ironman was his pen name. His articles were so influential that celebrities often visited the restaurants he reviewed. Cody, once mocked as a dropout living on a pension, now earned his income solely through his talent for writing and popularity, regardless of his educational background. "I saw you entering a restaurant I know and realized you are the Gourmet Iron Man. Please, Cody, I apologize for the past, but can you feature our restaurant on your blog or in the media?" Ethan added. "I know it's too convenient, but I'm asking too." I had once cared deeply for Ethan, no doubt about it. But after 10 years without contact, their return now, trying to salvage only the good parts, made me feel nauseous beyond disgust. It's way too convenient. Even if you apologize, your mindset hasn't changed, has it? We're still living on pensions, you know? Can you still apologize despite that? Tiana responded to my words. "I can apologize," she responded immediately. "Your pride and beliefs are so flimsy. You insulted us over something so trivial that you can apologize so easily? That is. Isn't it because people like that are in management that the store's business is getting worse? Always about money, no passion in what they do. Say whatever you want to me. I'll take it as my punishment. But please, the article about our store." At that moment, "Well, that's a bit of a problem," Cody said. "What?" exclaimed Tiana. "Didn't your family also runs a Japanese restaurant called Sakura besides Italian place, Ruble D?" "Yes. And a ramen place, Ramen Master, right?" Yes, but what does that have to do with anything?
I knew about Ruble D since you got married, but I didn't know much about the managing company, so I ended up writing bad reviews for the other places too. Just the day before yesterday. What?
She was frozen by Cody's revelation.
The magazine asked me to write a critical piece on these places. They said they've been getting bad reviews lately and wanted to feature them. So I wrote exactly what I saw. I even spread rumors about the poor attitude of the managers, which I heard from another writer during my visit. The ramen place served bowls with fingers in them, and the Japanese place lacked cleanliness. Some dishes were served cold, as if they were frozen. Isn't that a bit much?
I also heard about this from Cody, saying,
I might have written something bad about Tiana's family.
That's how I learned about her family situation. It was more of a disclosure of facts than bad-mouthing.
What else was there?
Cody muttered as Tiana started to tremble.
Did you write about everything? It was my way of showing care. I thought it was unfair for customers to suffer losses. I've submitted the article today.
Hearing about the submission, Tiana, who was clinging to Cody, and Ethan both collapsed weakly on the spot.
You're kidding, right?
She murmured.
Education doesn't really matter in the end. If we take care of things one at a time, everyone gets equal results, and even small talents can grow with effort.
Like Cody.
Your family only hires college grads, which isn't bad, but you can't judge someone's character by a resume. You look down on people too much. Did you learn something?
At my words, Tiana contorted her face and apologized.
I'm sorry.
She must have realized how shameful her behavior had been towards someone she had once cut ties with. She apologized and left. Ethan also said,
I'm truly sorry for forgetting the kindness of those who raised me and for constantly choosing the wrong path.
And with tears, he followed Tiana. I wish they had realized this sooner but didn't say it aloud. That's your path. Keep going. Even though we cut ties, a parent's heart remains. After Cody's article was published, it became a hot topic online, and Tiana's family's store lost customers. Reports said they were using expired meat and mislabeling products. It became apparent they were a conglomerate of scandals and closed all stores within a year. Bankruptcy. From what I hear on internet forums, Ethan and Tiana divorced after that incident. Tiana struggles to find work outside the food industry and lives alone in a cheap apartment. Ethan was seen working part-time at a discount store near their old home. There were arguments heard from their home before the bankruptcy, and their marriage deteriorated as the business did. Both cut off ties, and though I can't confirm the truth, I hope Ethan learns what's truly right for him through these hardships. If we ever meet again, no, I'm still too angry. They should suffer and learn from society. As for me, I've recovered from an illness a few years ago and am now living happier and healthier, all thanks to the dedicated support of Cedric and his wife, and the joy of my grandchildren. And most of all, it's thanks to my precious husband who heals me. Caddy has grown much stronger and is now a powerful mom. Caddy says, "It's starting to look like you." That said, I was supposed to be ladylike. It's strange. I do see similarities in the way we scold our grandchildren or when I'm admonishing Cedric. It's strange how non-blood-related family members can resemble each other. I want to continue watching over Cedric and his family. Since recovering, I've started going on walking dates 3 times a week to a nearby park with Cody. It's a small joy, but it feels like returning to my youth, and I'm happy. I'll keep taking care of my health and enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime life.
Hey, cruel wife. How many times do I have to tell you? The fork. There's no fork. Are you telling me to eat lunch with my hands? What a ridiculous cruel wife.
After our child was born, my husband started calling me a cruel wife occasionally.
Why did I marry this man?
I could hardly remember. Before we got married, I thought I liked him because he was kind and considerate. It was often said that women would change after getting married and having children. But I would ask this. What about men who don't change at all even after having kids, Isn't that somehow strange? Fed up with my mounting irritation, I shouted back at my husband on the phone.
Shut up! If there's no fork, then eat with your hands. Even a baby can eat with their hands. Why can't you?
My name is Carol, a 36-year-old office worker. By the way, I am currently on parental leave. Though in a different department, my husband Kent was a colleague at the same company. Kent, a responsible and respected manager, was our team leader. After dating for 3 years, we got married. We were both busy with work, but we spent our days off together and had a reasonably happy life. However, I began to have certain troubles as I got older.
When will you guys let me see my grandchild?
These were the words of Louis, who is Kent's dad, as my father-in-law. Every time he looked at me and said this, I get sick to my stomach. I don't like Louis, or rather I hate him. He's arrogant and acts so pompous. Louis was a department head in a fairly large company. He may be a man in positions of authority, but I always think that it just at work and doesn't apply at home.
I often saw him scolding mother-in-law Deanna. When I told Kent, he said, "My parents have always been like that. They haven't divorced, so it must be working out, right?"
He talked about it as if it was none of his business, which made me wonder if this was really okay. We got married when I was 28, but we didn't have children for a while. About 2 years into our marriage, we started to think it might be difficult to conceive naturally, so we went to the hospital together. The test results revealed there was something wrong with Kent.
What? You mean I'm the cause? Really?
Kent couldn't believe what the doctor said. Even after getting a second opinion at 2 other hospitals, the results were the same.
All I could do was to try to cheer up the disheartened Kent, saying, "The doctor said there's still a chance. I'll do my best too."
Looking back, maybe Kent didn't even like these words from me. After that, we started treatment, which was quite tough. Not only was it physically tough, but it was also mentally taxing. Every time I passed a pregnant woman with a big belly at the OBGYN, I kept thinking, why can't I have a baby?
Every time I saw Louis during this time, he asked repeatedly, "Hasn't my grandchild been born yet?"
Deanna was always kind to me, encouraging me not to worry.
"Dad is such a problem. I've explained to him that I'm the cause, but..."
Ken said in disgust. The treatment was hard, but back then, I hadn't even considered divorcing Kent. Then, when I was 35, I finally conceived our long-awaited baby.
Even Louis was pleased, saying, "Really?"
I was starting to give up hope, but now I'll finally be a granddad. His words were excessive, but he seemed happy. Deanna also told me to take care of myself.
What surprised us even more was that I was expecting twins. There was some anxiety about suddenly becoming a mother of 2, but Kent said, "Let me know anything I can do, I'll do anything."
As might be expected of twins, by the time I passed the 6-month mark, my belly was as big as if I was at full term. By then, we knew both were boys.
But there was anxiety as well as joy. This one is growing well, but the other hasn't grown much since last time. The doctor sometimes told me at checkups.
I prepared myself for a smaller birth and prayed for their safe growth every day. Being pregnant with twins, I was able to start my maternity leave early. Kent had been promoted to manager around that time, perhaps in recognition of his hard work. But with his new responsibilities, he started coming home later and using work as an excuse. "Hey, can't you come home a bit earlier? It's getting hard to move around with my big belly," I said. His response was, "What can I do? It's work. I'll do my best once they're born." Thankfully, Deanna, who lives nearby, often came to check on me. I always thought Deanna was a quiet person, but she talked a lot when it was just the 2 of us.
"How are you feeling, Carol? I made this because you said it was delicious before. Eat up. And I bought some daily necessities for you. Deanna, you're really a godsend."
Thanks to Deanna, I could lead a calm life during my pregnancy. I'm truly grateful even now. Later, I gave birth to fraternal twin boys via C-section. My eldest son, Rui, was 5 pounds, and my second son, Ray, was 4.5 pounds. Kent and I had already decided on their names together. I was discharged from the hospital after about a week, but the boys couldn't come home due to their low weight. On the day of my discharge, Kent came to pick me up. I was depressed, but he said, "Think of it as a chance to rest for a while. Let's be positive." Frustrated by Kent's off-the-mark comment, my irritation peaked when I got home.
What is this?
The house was a mess, the table cluttered with stuff, and the sink overflowed with dishes. Even Kent realized it was bad and said, "I was going to clean up, but I've been busy with work, and on my days off, I'm too tired and sleep in, and I thought, you're coming back today anyway." Realizing he expected me to clean up made me more sad than angry.
Kent, didn't you say you'd step up once the kids were born?
Of course, I'll help with anything I can. But the kids are still in the hospital, so I thought it's okay to start helping once they're back," he said with a careless laugh. I just told him to look up how to care for someone postpartum and locked myself in the bedroom. A few minutes later, he quietly opened the door. "Sorry, Carol. I looked up how to care for someone after giving birth. You're right, I shouldn't make you strain yourself. Rest easy today. Starting tomorrow, you'll just do as much as you can." With a smug face, he left the room. What does he mean by starting tomorrow, you'll just do as much as you can? It seemed Kent still didn't understand the meaning of rest. Perhaps I could have relied on my parents, but my brother and his wife lived there, and their eldest child was a student preparing for exams then. When I told about my pregnancy, that night my sister-in-law messaged, "Are you planning to come to our parents' home after giving birth? Please keep it short if possible, since our eldest son is studying for exams." I might have said the same if I were in her shoes. My mom was supposed to help me after my discharge, but she fractured her leg falling down the stairs the day before I was discharged. Considering Kent's behavior today, he probably won't be of much help. But the next day, my savior appeared.
Congratulations on your discharge, Carol. When Kent told me you needed help, I wondered what happened. "Rely on me for anything," she said.
To me, Deanna seemed like a goddess. Since I needed to breastfeed, Deanna drove me to the hospital every day.
Once I asked Kent to deliver pumped breast milk to the hospital because of feeling unwell, he said, "Me? Impossible, I'll be late for work. I'll tell Mom." And left for work quickly.
Kent always left inconvenient tasks to others. Kent will surely do more once childcare starts, and I need to try harder too. At that time, I still had the energy to think that way. A month after giving birth, my son's discharge was arranged. I was overjoyed at the thought of finally living together. On the day we brought the boys home, Louis visited and said, "This one is quite small, is he okay? Compared to him, this one looks healthy." He ignored quiet and smaller Ray, only doting on Rui.
"What's with this old man? Enough already."
I prayed the boys wouldn't get attached to Louis. Taking care of twins was far beyond my imagination. Feeding was doubled and they rarely slept at the same time. One of them was always awake. When both cried at the same time, I almost panicked. Deanna came almost every day, and my mom, whose leg was getting better, also visited regularly. Without these two mothers, I might have collapsed.
"Deanna and Mom seem to get along well. We'll take care of Rui and Ray, so you should sleep while you can," they insisted, pushing me into the bedroom.
I managed during the day, but the problem was at night. Kent, who said he'd do his best once the kids were born, hadn't changed. He still came home late, and by the time he arrived, I had finished bathing the babies. The most he did was admire the twins' cute sleeping faces.
"They're so cute."
He often made them wake up by touching their cheeks. When they woke up and cried, the other would join in.
"Hey! They just fell asleep after so much effort. Don't mess it up," I snapped. "You get angry like that again. Carol, you've been too irritable since having the babies. Remember, they can see you." He joked. Huh. It's your fault.
I became upset as Kent complained and quickly headed for a shower. Kent ate the meals I made whenever he wanted to eat, and took a bath I prepare whenever he wanted to take. And he slept and woke up at his own convenience. Even when the kids cry, he never seems to hear them and remains asleep. It's the same with diaper changing. He does change them if I ask, albeit awkwardly. However, when it's poop, he stubbornly refuses, exclaiming, "Whoa! Carol, come here." Rui pooped, so change his diaper quickly.
What does he mean by doing his best? Is this it? That can't be true, right?
I felt like I wasn't co-parenting with Kent. I would have collapsed if it weren't for Mom and Deanna. When I was pregnant with the twins, I begged Kent many times to take paternity leave. I asked, but it's difficult.
It's a pity, but I'll do my best when I get home from work,
he said. And this was the result. Furthermore, Kent told me,
at my company, no man takes parental leave. The wives of my colleagues make lunch every day. Professional moms are different, huh?
Before giving birth, I used to make Kent's lunch every day. I didn't have time for that since the twins came, so he had to buy lunch or eat out. Kent seemed annoyed by this, and I felt his sarcasm. By then, my love for Kent had completely cooled. Could anyone still love their husband in this situation? Maybe it's time for a divorce. He hardly contributes to household chores, just complains. But raising twins alone, that's unsettling. I hesitated to take the step towards divorce, especially with the twins still so small. Meanwhile, the boys grew steadily. Rui remained a bit smaller but eagerly drank both formula and breast milk. By 6 months, they could almost grow to average size. We started weaning. I learned recipes from Mom and Deanna, read books, and tried many things myself. Despite being twins, their food preferences were different, which was fun. Looking at the mushy baby food, Kent said, "Wow, how can they eat this? Looks disgusting." While saying that and feeding our son, I intervened.
Enough. I'll take over. To which he replied, "Why can you only talk to me like that? I'm doing my best in my own way. Carol, you like a cruel wife. Be a little nicer to me, I feel suffocated."
His words brought tears to my eyes. Is it my fault? I'm trying hard, aren't I? That night, I thought to myself, maybe I had been too harsh on Kent. I felt a little remorse. To apologize, I made lunch for Ken the next day for the first time in a long time. Kent seemed happy and a little embarrassed.
I made Kent lunch today, he was shyly happy about it.
I told Deanna, who was at my house, and she responded, "Thanks for doing that for Kent, but you should let him buy his own lunch. He should be making it himself." We laughed about how Louis would dislike that, and just then, my mobile phone rang.
Maybe it's a thank you call for the lunch?
Excited, I answered.
Where's the fork?
Kent's yelling echoed in my ears.
Sorry, what? I responded. Hey, cruel wife. How many times do I have to tell you? The fork. There's no fork in the lunch. Are you telling me to eat with my hands? What a ridiculous cruel wife. As I fell silent, he said to me, "Is this payback for yesterday? You really have a bad attitude. Bring me a fork in 5 minutes."
I felt bad about forgetting the fork. But did he need to be told this much? At that moment, I stopped seeing this man as family. Maybe it was too late, even by my own standards.
My anger welled up and it reached its peak. Without regard to Deanna being next to me, I shouted, "Shut up! If there's no fork, then eat with your hands. Even a baby can eat with their hands, why can't you?" Perhaps Kent didn't expect such a reaction and said, "We're getting a divorce, that's it with you, the cruel wife. We'll talk when I get home." And hung up.
I glanced at Deanna, who had an unexpected reaction. Kent came home very early that night, perhaps finishing work at a normal time. Behind him, Louis and Deanna were there. Louis sat down arrogantly and demanded,
"Hey, coffee!"
Thinking it was probably the last time I'd see this uncle, I silently made coffee. I've heard most of it from Kent. Aren't you being a bit too selfish? Louis spoke to me arrogantly as usual, laughing at the idea of a housewife being so bossy. I was an office worker, just on parental leave, but I didn't feel like explaining. I said, "Really? I just get so irritated with Kent, who shows no responsibility or awareness as a father after the birth of our children." Louis sighed. Men are like that. I was the same. It can't be helped. You're the reason we couldn't have grandchildren for so long, yet you haven't apologized to our family? Huh? What did this man just say? So that's why he was so harsh on me. Kent looked uneasy next to Louis, who demanded an apology. Really? That's a lie from Kent. The issue lies with your son. I pulled out Kent's medical results and slammed them in front of Louis. Even Louis was taken aback and accused him.
"Carol, I'm sorry. I said those things, but I don't really want a divorce. I apologize for lying about the test results. I just couldn't believe them."
Kent apparently didn't want a divorce. He probably thought bringing Louis and Deanna would work in his favor. I quietly handed him the divorce papers.
"A joke, right? Rui and Ray are still so young. You want to make them poor fatherless children?
Better fatherless than with a father like you. You're always lying, Kent. You never change, always saying you'll do your best. When have you done? I'm tired too. Let me be free. And, you think I don't know anything?" Kent looked confused. "A lot of people at your company heard today's call. It's embarrassing. A colleague called me, worried. That's when I heard about the parental leave. You said you didn't need it, all lies." Concerned about me with the twins, Kent's boss had asked to him, "How long will you take for maternity leave?" Despite that, Kent had declined. It was also revealed that Kent could have left work on time on some days, but he deliberately stayed late. Kent was silent and downcast at my words. Seeing this, Louis intervened. "Well, you know, men have their own circles. Supporting that is a wife's role. You'll understand eventually." He looked at Deanna as if seeking agreement. Deanna scoffed at Louis. "That's something I'll never understand, no matter how many years pass." Louis was taken aback by her reaction. Ignoring Louis, Deanna said, "Kent, let Carol go. Make sure to pay proper child support. That's the least you can do." Not expecting this from Deanna, Kent looked helplessly at Louis. Then, Louis suggested something outrageous. "If you divorce, leave one child here." "The bigger one, yes, that one." Pointing at our eldest son, Rui. I was so angry that I almost hit Louis. Then Deanna slapped Louis, shouting, "Enough already!" Louis was shocked and exclaimed, What have you done? We might as well divorce too." As if waiting for these words, Deanna said, "Really? Thank you. Then please sign here." I've already done. 2 divorce papers were laid out on the table. The 2 men remained silent and seemed to be thinking. This wasn't supposed to happen. After Kent yelled at me on the phone, Deanna chuckled and said, "Kent grew up watching Louis treated women poorly. A foolish husband and a foolish son, pathetic. Carol, I've reached my limit too. The end of a man who can't do anything alone must be ridiculous, don't you think? Let's make them regret it." I felt a bit scared seeing Deanna's face, but realized she must have endured worse treatment for a long time. Kent and Louis filled out the divorce papers while saying, "Regret this," and handed them over as if throwing them. They frustrated me till the end, but Deanna and I were finally free. I returned to my parents' home. My brother's family had moved nearby, so their children could attend a local high school. Deanna, having received her share of the assets, moved close to my parents' home. She's become quite close with my mom and visits her often. The boys are happy, loved by their two grandmothers. As for Kent, the fork incident became widely known at work, and he lost respect, especially among female colleagues, being whispered about as a women's enemy. He's unlikely to engage in office romance again. Due to his poor domestic skills, he's been demoted from his manager position, as customers complained about his sloppy, unhygienic appearance. His diet has deteriorated, and he's gained weight. Feeling uncomfortable, he recently requested a transfer. By the time I return from parental leave, Kent won't be at the same company. Similarly, Lewis's personal life suffered. He tried to make this incident a laughing matter with his superiors over drinks, but the room fell silent.
The way I see it, a man who can't treasure his family isn't worth much.
The CEO personally told him, so Lewis's remaining months until retirement will be uncomfortable. He'll likely spend his old age alone. Both got what they deserved. Deanna started part-time work at a nearby grocery store and seems to be enjoying her days. I'm happy for her. The twins, Rui and Ray, are about to celebrate their first birthday. A few days ago, the two of them started walking at the same time. I was so moved that I couldn't help but burst into tears.
They have different food preferences, but they like the same toys and are now playfully fighting over them, saying ah. Ah.
Watching them, I vowed to be a strong mother.